I'm guessing that most of you here today are wanting to finally learn to crochet. Some of you may be beginners and some of you may be wanting just to fine-tune some of your skills. I'm hoping that this tutorial will be useful to all of you. Many of you may have actually learned to crochet before, and what I've heard from people is that you tend to give up because of frustration. I sympathize with you, and I want to try and identify some of the reasons we get frustrated and hopefully help you not to give up and to finally learn to crochet. Hi, Lindy here, and thank you for joining my channel. If you are new, welcome. Whatever you enjoy as a hobby or sport, you'll understand the process of learning and the excitement of the outcome when you finally get the skill right. From a health and brain perspective, we all know that it's good to learn a new skill, especially as we age. The skill here would be eye-hand coordination and also keeping your hands agile. By identifying these 4 hurdles, it may help you to finally learn to crochet. The first reason I identified is very often when we start to crochet, we don't have a goal. We begin by making samples. Samples are good to practice on, but they're boring and there's no end goal. It's like hitting a ball against a wall when you want to play tennis. So my suggestion is start with a project in mind. Don't make it too big, don't make it too complicated. You could make yourself a scarf or a cushion cover, or in my case, we're going to be making a draft stopper, which is behind me at the door. I'm sure we all have doors and windows which have drafts, and this is an easy, simple project. And I'm going to show you a couple of things to make it even more exciting. Another reason people stop crocheting is because they get frustrated that it doesn't look perfect immediately. And we all know that to learn a new skill takes time and practice. I see it over and over again, how people pull out the first row and repeat it many times. The first part is the most difficult part, and over again, people give up because they feel it doesn't look good enough. What I'm going to suggest is that you start your draft stopper. You just keep going. Once you get to a few rows, you'll find that it actually looks better. Your tension starts improving. By the time you get to the end of your draft stopper, which is going to be about 80 centimeters long, the width of a door, you'll actually be able to look and see the beginning of your draft stopper and how much you've grown and your tension and stitching has improved. I wish I could give you each a small piece of work with a couple of rows so you could just get going on that, because that's what you need. If you have a friend who does handcrafts, ask them to maybe crochet a couple of rows for you and you take it from there. But I'm also going to teach you other skills to help you with this journey on learning to crochet. The third point is to make sure that the yarn you purchase is something you really like. The color, maybe a bright yellow or orange or whatever your color is. Try to stay away from darker colors, blacks and browns. They're a lot more difficult to actually see the stitches in the beginning, even in good lighting. So start with light and bright, fun colors. Make sure that your yarn is soft and feels nice on your hands. And I would recommend a medium number 4 yarn. Cottons are beautiful to work with. They're so soft and they knit up quite thickly. So it's a good starting yarn. As you progress more in your crocheting, you'll be able to choose your own cottons and you'll be able to go much finer as well. And then number 4, buy or borrow a crochet hook that sits comfortably in your hands. This is a really nice ergonomic plastic handle with a metal shaft. You won't need to buy a whole selection of hooks to start. I bought these and I've got some more here behind me on my board. But initially you'll only need from about a 3mm to a 6mm, and then the halves in between. So it'll go 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6. That's going to be sufficient to start with your number 4 medium balls of yarn. Rather choose a handle which is soft in your hands, which is nice to work with. Don't buy a whole set of crochet hooks because they're a good price. Here's the start of my draft stopper. This is the width. Just like everything in life, we all have our own way of doing things. One thing that is similar is that when we crochet, we hold 3 things in our hands. The project we're working on, the yarn, and the crochet hook. Now, you may choose to hold the yarn in your left hand or your right hand. I choose to hold the yarn in my right hand with my hook and the project in my left hand. Some people mix this around and do it their own way. Another comment is that if you have started crocheting and you have already got yourself into a rhythm, keep going with that way because that is your comfort zone. If you've never learned to crochet before, I can show you how I do it and you can make a decision as to what suits you best. My sister is left-handed, but she still crochets with the hook in her right hand. So just like some people who are left-handed use the knife in their right hand, exactly the same with crocheting. It's your decision and whatever is comfortable with you. Once you learn to crochet, that is how you will continue. I knit and crochet, so I tend to hold the crochet hook as I do with knitting. So it's easy to switch from knitting to crocheting. Let's recap on those 4 hurdles which can prevent us from learning to crochet. Setting yourself a goal, not being too harsh on yourself in trying to learn the skill quickly and perfectly. Choose a yarn that you enjoy working with, that's soft and you like the color, and choose a crochet hook which is comfortable and works for you. The tutorial we're going to learn today, how to crochet, is going to involve learning 3 stitches and 2 techniques. This sounds like a lot to learn in one tutorial, but in order to start the project and continue, you will need to learn these 5 skills. Did you know that there are 6 basic stitches in crocheting? And to think that these 6 stitches can create such a variety of patterns and textures. I'm going to teach you 3 of these stitches today, and the other 3 stitches I'll teach you in my next tutorial. Number 1 is how to make a slip knot. Number 2 is how to start your row making chain stitches. Number 3 would be your single crochet, which is a tight and dense stitch and perfect for a draft stopper. Number 4, I want to show you a technique how to keep your edges of your project straight. And finally, how to change color. I'm going to show you the traditional way of doing it, and then I'm going to show you the way I do it, which may help you with the dreaded task of sewing back threads. These are the yarns I'm using for my draft stopper project. They are all number 4 weight and left over from previous projects. Some yarns are cotton and some are acrylic. I wouldn't mix the 2 yarns usually for a garment, but they're fine for this draft stopper. I want to make fun stripes, and even with just the single crochet stitch, we can create more interesting patterns by changing the yarns. Single crochet is a tight and dense stitch, so perfect to keep the draft out. We don't need to repeat this order of yarn, as some of them have less yarn, so we'll put a little stripe in and then further down. I'm going to make the draft stopper 80 centimeters long, which is the size of a standard door, or 31.5 inches. Have you noticed the background of this beautiful granny square blanket? This was my great-grandmother's, and it's very delicate. I'm using this board, which is my blocking board, to work on because it's comfortable and I like the contrast with the lighter colors. For this medium weight number 4 yarn, it's recommended that you use a size 5mm crochet hook. I would suggest that you use what the manufacturer suggests. However, I do prefer a slightly smaller hook, and I usually go down 1 size. So this is a size 4mm, which I'm going to use. It still is a large enough hook to show you what I'm doing and to work with this number 4 yarn. My favorite hook is actually a size 3, but that does make your tension quite tight, so it's your preference as to what you do. The other thing is how you're going to hold the hook. Now, you may have heard that there is a thing called a pencil holding, and then there's the knife. It's your choice as to which way you hold it. I prefer the pencil. When we get to the yarn, there are 2 areas that the yarn can be worked from. There's the center of the yarn ball, and then there's the outside. Now, I prefer to take it from the center of the yarn. I find it flows more freely and it keeps the ball in shape. First stitch we're going to learn is how to do a slip knot, and this is going to be the start of our chain stitches. We start by holding the yarn and the hook, and we twist it around. Hold the loop crossed in your fingers, Then put this yarn over, pull it through and tighten it. Let's do that again. Over, hold the yarn, round and tighten. Now we're going to make the chain stitches. The width of our draft stopper is 30 centimeters or 11.5 inches. So let's see how many chain stitches we need using the hook with the thread on the shaft. The shaft is this area here, and this is the 4 millimeters we're talking about. So don't work at the edge or the point of your yarn. That is not the correct size of the hook. This is where we want to work. So to make the chain stitches, we're going to hold it tightly, go round and then just loop it through. Hold the end. I always pull away from each other so I get a good tension. 2. And that is a perfect length. When you're making your chain stitch, you want to hold your thumb on this and put it around and then pull away from each other as you loop it through. So your thumb pulls down and the crochet hook pulls up. So you hold it round, pull away from the hook, which allows the hook to go through the loop and then pull up. So now we've made 50 chain stitches. I'm going to immediately show you how to keep the sides straight. So in order to keep your 50 stitches, you cannot take it and go back into that loop. You will then be coming in and losing a stitch. So what you need to do, if it's a single crochet, you only need to do one extra chain stitch, and that is the one that goes up the side, and you then go into the next one to make your first single crochet. Now, as we mentioned, the first row or two is difficult because we're trying to hold the yarn, and you can see there's not a lot to hold. We then put the yarn over and pull it through. Now what we've done here, and at any stage you can pull a loop and walk away, and when you get back nothing will have unraveled. Over here what we have is if I put it down to show you, we have one stitch. We've got 50 chain stitches. One stitch has gone up the side and one stitch has gone to the next loop. Now obviously the best way to keep it really straight is to make sure that you have 50 stitches in every row and that you turn it correctly. However, it's not always easy to keep counting. You may be distracted by something you're doing. Here's the first single crochet. The second single crochet goes into this loop here. You pick up 2 threads, you go round, and then you go over and pull it through. Now you can see that each one of these chain stitches is made up of 3 threads. You've got the one at the bottom, the one at the top, and the one at the back. And some people will pick up 1 thread and some will pick up 2. I always pick up 2 because I think if you pick up 1, you're going to get a little bit of a gap starting. So each does it their own way. Here's another single crochet, and you can see how I hold the chain stitch when I'm working on it. As I mentioned, this is my comfortable way to hold my hook. I go into the next stitches here, picking up 2, round, pull it through and over, pull it through. Back into the 2, picking up 2 stitches, round, pull it through, over and pull them off. We're now creating a nice start to our draft stopper. This, as we mentioned, is the width. We're going to go in single crochet, which gives it a tighter knit. It's a closer knit. A double crochet will have a little more air in between the threads. So let's carry on with our single crochet. This is when I say to you, just get through the row. Don't try and make it perfect. It's never going to be perfect when you start. But if you keep stopping, you're going to keep putting that extra pressure on yourself to repeat the most difficult part. However you want to hold this. So I tend to hold the yarn and the hook in my right hand, and then my left hand looks after the project I'm working on. But you decide which makes it more comfortable. As mentioned, if you have already crocheted, you will already have a comfort place. But if you've never crocheted before, try different ways and see what works for you. As we get more into the project, I tend to hold it a little differently. And every now and then you just pull a little more yarn out of the ball so that you have an even flow. Something that can also happen is because this yarn is multi-threaded, you can see all the little threads that make up this yarn. If you go into it and you don't go exactly between the 2 and the 1 thread, you can catch the little pieces, and that starts making it a little bit untidy. So try to keep all the threads of this one yarn together. The first row is slow. Even for somebody who has done a lot of crocheting, they will find that it takes time to crochet the first row. It is advisable to count the first row so that you don't skip any stitches, and you can easily go back and fix it. Also, if you want to stop at any stage, you can. It won't make a mark in your project. So there, it was a bit of a strange situation, so I'm going to go back, undo that, and I'm going to go here into here, picking up 2, and then I get to the end, and you can see I've just gone into this one. So now this is the last one I need to go into. Now we've got our 50 stitches, our 50 chain, and you can see how beautifully this is forming here. To move so that you keep the edge of this straight, I'm going to show you again what we do. Because it's a single crochet, you only need one chain stitch. So you finish the row, you then do one chain stitch, which makes you go up the side. You now turn it around and you go into the next stitch. And now we keep going. We're just doing exactly the same stitch all through this project. The change is going to be in the stripes and the color, and we're going to make it a little more interesting just with color while we learn the stitch. If you get tired of the stitch, change the color. So here we go. There we can see how we've gone neatly up the side here, and we're going straight along here with our single crochet. In the description below, I have a timer which will explain to you at what stage I'm making changes or adding new information. So if you wish to jump ahead, you can do so to see how I change colors, or continue watching how I do the single crochet and how I turn to keep a straight edge at the end of the row. You can see it's twisting a little bit because it's still a thin strip of what I'm making, but as it gets bigger it becomes more and more comfortable to work with. And that is why I say to you, don't give up. It's never going to look neat and perfect when you start, unless you are really fortunate. Most of the time it will take practice. The aim here is to keep an even tension. So now we're at the end and we have one more stitch in this row. So we go into that stitch, and again we're going to turn to the other side. But first of all, we do one chain stitch and then you turn it around. Start the first single crochet in the next row. And you might have noticed that after we've gone past the chain stitches, we're actually going into 2 stitches again, one in the top and one at the back. So we go top and to the back. What is important to remember when you're doing a single crochet is there's only one place you need to put your crochet hook. It's here, picking up the 2 stitches, round and through. If you go anywhere else, you're not going to get that little pattern forming. So it is important just to mention that. So we're going to continue to the end of this row, and I want to show you why we do what we do when we turn. So we go into the last stitch
And to keep that straight line down the side, just to recap, we go 1 chain stitch, we turn it around, and we go straight back into that same space. Do not jump ahead, and I'm going to show you why. Because when you go into that and you go round with those 2 stitches and then work them off, you are only getting 1 loop here. So the 2 are forming a loop. If you were to not do that chain stitch and you just went straight back into this stitch here, you would not get the same loop and you would be moving inwards. So always remember, when you get to the end of the row, you've just finished that last stitch, you go round and do a chain stitch which goes straight up. You then turn it around and go straight, and actually if you turn it this way around, you're opening it a little bit more, but you can work out what suits you. And then you go into that space round and make your first stitch. So although there are 2 pieces coming up here, you're only making 1 loop. So that's only counted as 1. This is then loop 2. So let me get to the end of this row, and then I'm going to show you how we join our next color. Here we are at the end of the row, and we are now in the situation where we're wanting to change the color of the yarn. So I'm going to show you the traditional way, and then I'm going to show you how I do it, which I find to be neater and less work. So in either situation, we're going to need to cut off this thread. So we cut off the thread here, and we don't need much thread. We then tighten this up in both situations. We're going to move on to another yarn. So here we are, we've knotted that off. We're now going to change to a new color. And let's use this lovely green. This also has the yarn coming out of the center, so we're ready to start. There are 2 ways to do this. You can either make a knot in it, which is how most people would do that, or you can actually just start by holding the 2 threads together like this, so you don't have a knot, and you hold it really tightly. You put your crochet hook into the last stitch, so we've finished this row, into the last stitch, round, ready to make our chain stitch, and turn it around. Now this does mean there is no knot, but we've got a nice situation to work it back just now. Then we just continue our single crochet as we did before into the next stitch, and so we go on forming our pattern as we mentioned, same stitch, different color, and that is the pattern because we're learning to crochet. Once we've learned a couple more stitches, we might vary the pattern, but for now we're just going to change the color in order to vary the pattern. So let's just get a little bit down this row so we've got space to see how to sew back a newly introduced color. So here we are. We can put the crochet hook aside because we're going to concentrate on this. Now what happens here is we have 2 strands every time you change a color. The strand you were using, the new strand you've introduced. And the way to do that conventionally is to then take a nice large darning needle, thread your first color, and weave it back into the color that it was in. Now this can obviously be done immediately. It can be done at the very end, which obviously then is going to leave you with many threads. So the thing about this is you need to go this way and then work it back, otherwise it'll start coming undone on its own. This color then needs to go into that color. And what will happen is, unless you're very careful about making sure you weave everything back on the one side, and in that case you could maybe put a little marker or something to show that this is the wrong side. So what I do then is I put a little marker here which shows this is the wrong side. And then I know that all of my threads I'm sewing back are going to be sewn on this side. However, sewing back all these colors and having two for every time you change your colors becomes a little bit tiring and it takes up a lot of time. So what I do differently is the following. Let's take this thread out now that we've just woven back. And let's start this row again. So that's your one option if that's how you prefer to do it. The way I like to do it is the following. So again, I've finished that off, I've cut the thread, and I've got my new color, which I just hold carefully together like that. This is the end of my row, so what I do, as I did before, I just pick up a stitch and I do one chain, and then I turn it around, and I'm now starting here. What I do now is I bring these two threads either to the front or the back. The end of the row is going to be sewn in, so it's not imperative that it's perfect. And if you wanted to, you could try and get rid of that little knot. Now, you don't want to get complicated here because you're still learning, but if you learn this from the beginning, it just may be of help to you. So I take these two and I hold them down, and we're going to make our first stitch, single crochet. I then pull both colors like that, and I continue on. But as I'm doing my single crochet, I'm weaving these in here. So I'm picking these up and they are following along on the top, and I can give them a little tug to tighten them up a bit. And if they do roll a little bit like that, it's not serious because I can just pull them. Not so that we get this pulled out of shape, but just along. And I just continue in this way. Let me take this little marker out, which is getting in my way. So we keep those there, and you decide how comfortable it is and what you do. Sometimes you can hold it like that. Now we've done about 10 stitches, and you can see it's still straight on the side, which we can tidy up on the next row. And you pull one thread at a time. So the green one, hold it here and pull, and the green one, you hold it here and pull. And now what we can do is we can actually just trim these two threads off and continue with the row. There we have our new colour. Let me continue in this green, and we're going to colour change as we go along. I've completed one row of this peppermint green. I want to now bring in some brown. And I want to keep dark and light colours evenly dispersed throughout. So here we're going to do a change of colour again. So on the side you've just completed, we go into the last stitch, take it round, one chain, turn it over, bring these threads across here, go back into that same space and continue with our single crochet. And then after a certain way along, we're going to give this green a little tug. So we hold it here and we pull that peppermint green in like that, and we give the brown a little tug. And now we can trim these two colors. Make sure you trim the correct, not the one that we're working with. And we can trim it quite close, and we continue in the brown. I'm going to make the brown a little bit thicker, and then I'm going to put peppermint green on the other side. So we're doing lots of different patterns with the colors. I'd love to hear your comments and whether this tutorial helped you learn to crochet. My name is Lindy and thank you for joining my channel. If you enjoyed this tutorial on how to finally learn to crochet, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified when my next tutorial with the next 3 stitches are available. Take care and bye.